One of the first video game series I ever played was Crash Bandicoot. Specifically, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped was the one that first got me hooked. I still remember being amazed by this funny, goofy game where you play as a bandicoot that looks more like a fox or whatever that does the silly dance every now and then, and all the weird stages with different themes. The first impression you form of a video game series is really important, as it sets your expectations for what the other games in the series is like. Crash Bandicoot 3 is a fun, easy, and light-hearted game with a cast of colorful characters that did everything the two games before it did well, while adding a whole lot of other good things to it. By playing Crash 3 first, your expectations will probably be pretty high to the two first games in the series, and the two first games mostly live up to those expectations. They're colorful, they're fun, they were innovative and fresh for their time, and the difficulty wasn't too high for either of them. Except that I'm lying, because Crash Bandicoot 1 is a brutal experience. Try to play Crash Bandicoot, and I promise you that you will most likely struggle with a few areas, especially the bridge. This mean motherfucker haunted my nightmares, and while I eventually managed to beat the game, this level was one of the first ones to make me rage quit. I like challenges, but eventually, it gets to a point where your disappointment in yourself becomes too big and you end up turning off the game to cool off.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead! Dead like if I can guarantee Henry would be okay, I'd hope you get an illness and then get hit by a car and die!
But after some time passed, I'd sit down and try to beat the level again, and even if I failed a whole lot, I would with every try look at what the game needed from me to beat it. I still remember the patience and the accuracy the game wanted me to learn before I could beat the level, and I still think about that as a valuable lesson for how to get through difficulties and challenges in video games to this day. At least now I do, because in 2011, I seem to have forgotten all about it. 2009 to 2012 was a different time in video games. It was a time when Call of Duty was the king of the scene, and every game you could think of had either a tint of brown or green to make them look gritty.
I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy.
Portal 2 had come out, Mass Effect 2 had come out, Batman Arkham City was on the way, and Skyrim was on the radar for most people, unlike a certain game that at the time was about to smack everyone in the face. A game that has been described as one of the best games of all time, and one of the most historically significant games of the 2010s.
Cooking Mama 4! Yeah! Cooking Mama が Nintendo 3DS で登場。楽しいお料理作りに驚きがいっぱいなのよ。
And also Dark Souls. I, like a lot of other people, have had lots of opinions about the Dark Souls series throughout the years. I just wasn't too into it for the longest time. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good challenge in a video game, and when I replay games, I do enjoy playing them on a harder difficulty than I initially did the first time. There's something really cool about playing games on higher difficulties, as it allows you to experience and rediscover games in different ways, and that you should always strive to find new challenges in the games you love. There are a lot of games out there that I genuinely find a lot more enjoyable on higher difficulties than on normal settings. Games like Shadow of the Colossus, The Last of Us, and God of War are perfect examples. Games that generally feel like they're pressuring you to act on your best judgment in pressing situations and to be smart about your moves and what you do tend to have a different feel to them on different difficulties, which is awesome. Enjoying games in new ways is great when the games are made with that in mind, but also when they allow you to enjoy video games on your own skill levels. Back in the earlier days of video games, you would sometimes see difficulty options in games, but usually there would only be one setting, which was intentional from the developers because that's the way you were supposed to experience the game. A lot of people talk about how they used to get more enjoyment out of video games when they were simple yet hard because they were challenging and the feeling of mastery was completely different than what it might be now. It's very simple. To beat a game, you had to get good, and that could take forever. People often talk about the difficulty in games like Mega Man 2 and Castlevania, games they would play for a really long time and feel super rewarded when they finally managed to beat them. For me, that game was Crash Bandicoot, a game that's simple yet challenging on different levels. As previously mentioned, it's very common to be able to change the difficulty to your own skill level in more modern games, and while this isn't a new concept, difficulty in games is something that is discussed a lot when new games come out. It seems the phrase, "new games are too easy," pops up from time to time, together with the concept of the game holding your hand the entire way to make sure that you always know what to do. Basically backseating itself pushing how-to instructions in your face, generally make enemies very dumb so you can do no wrong, and make it almost physically impossible to fail in a game where you should be able to fail.
Help me! Help me, Rod. Help me! Help you. Help me. Help you. Help me. Help you.
Stuff like this can quickly ruin some people's experience with a game and can also make you feel a bit stupid for not knowing something in the game. And so the demand for a newer game that didn't feel that way started to pile up. And this is where Dark Souls come in. For years and years and years, I've tried to understand why people have such a hard-on for Dark Souls. Countless times, I've tried to sit down and play on my own, but I always ended up getting stuck on certain enemies or being unable to figure out where I'm supposed to go. Did you notice that I said enemies? Yeah, that's because I've never been able to master the game properly, and I would get stuck on regular enemies. Anywhere you go on the internet, you will see people talking about Dark Souls being a difficult game because Dark Souls is a difficult game. A lot of people feel like the game can be way too punishing and unforgiving. Adapting to the difficulty is one of the hardest things about Dark Souls. Well, it's a good thing that the controls are simple and well put together, because the game itself can at times be a frustrating experience. But that's the kind of joy of these games. The only thing standing in the way of you beating this game is the effort you put into it and how patient you want to be with it. And it's not just the people who are super into it who don't stop talking about it. In fact, I like to think that there are more people out there wanting to argue that Dark Souls isn't all that great than there are people who actually love it. And usually their arguments go into territories like, the game is just too difficult to mask the lack of content. It's a game made for elite gamers that excludes other gamers. It's not difficult by design. It's difficult because of lack of design. And so on and so on. And while I personally don't agree with any of those statements, Dark Souls definitely makes me feel some kind of way. On one hand, I think the challenge that the game poses to the player can make you lose sight of the objective a little bit, which then in turn leaves you wondering if there's a reason for you fighting so many enemies or going through all these massive monsters. But on the other hand, I feel like the objective of the game itself is the challenge. Because of this, a lot of people give up very easily.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. I thought this would work. Threw everything I had at that guy, nothing.
That's how it goes sometimes, you know? You lose everything, and everything falls apart, and eventually you die and no one remembers you.
That is a very good point to make.
There was a period of time where you couldn't get away from the massive cultural impact it had. The hunger for Soulsborne games is just overwhelming, and it seems like Soulsborne gamers are chasing this high that they can never get back, and this is where this gets interesting for me. There's something about these games that keep drawing me in to try every couple of years, but I keep getting demotivated and I stop trying. You see, while I enjoy challenges in video games, I like to feel that the challenge is fair, and Dark Souls was in that weird space between fair and unfair for me. On one end, the controllers are pretty simple, but on the other hand, the game can also be very confusing. Half the time, I didn't even know where to go, and when I would find the way, it wouldn't feel right. Suddenly, I'd meet an enemy I felt like I wasn't supposed to meet this early on, and then I died, and I died, and I died. I've realized later that this often has to do with patience and how much I'm willing to put up with before I stop playing. And so I decided to give it another shot. How can this game be so undeniably addictive? And what is it that makes this game so interesting? To understand this, we need to talk about dying. Dying is a massive and integral part of the game, and you're gonna see this damn screen several times during your playthrough. At first, I thought that dying would be just as much a part of this game as it would be any other. You die, your progress is erased, and you have to do it all over again. But with Dark Souls, that's kind of the case, but it's also not the case. Because while you have to fight your way through the same enemies that you just struggled with all over again, your progress isn't entirely deleted because you can pick up the souls you lost. Every time you defeat an enemy, you acquire souls, which you can then in turn use to level up your character, purchase upgrades, weapons, items, anything. Essentially, it works as a form of currency. And why are souls important? Because upgrading your character is important to progress the game, which then brings us back to dying again. Every time you die, you get an opportunity to retrieve all the souls you lost, which means that while you have to fight all the stupid enemies all over again, it will actually make you stronger, as the souls you acquire also stack with the souls you retrieve, which is genius. Imagine dying a bunch only to get stronger. Isn't that the ultimate deal? Not only that, but as a bonus, you have to go back to the place you died to pick them back up again, which also serves kind of as a progress marker. While it doesn't really save the game or work as a checkpoint, it's a nice way of seeing how much you've actually progressed between deaths. Seeing that little green spot on the ground that you have to get to, being a little bit past a bunch of dudes you struggled with earlier, really boosts your confidence that you can make it through the challenging fights. Humans love being proud of themselves, and that sense of mastery that comes with beating a tough enemy is definitely the type of feeling that allows people to be really proud. It gives you such a kick that you constantly keep searching for that same high in new enemies, and that's where Dark Souls really excel. And none of this is the reason I fell in love with Dark Souls. What really made me fall in love with Dark Souls was playing Dark Souls 3 with my two other idiot friends, both of them with a massive Dark Souls boner who graciously agreed to help me through the sections of the game that I really struggled with.
Alright, it's Saturday night. I have no date, a 2-liter bottle of Shasta, and my all-rush mixtape. Let's rock.
There's a slightly obscure multiplayer system in these games where if you're stuck, you can summon in friends to help you get through most areas of the game. This comes in handy if you're having a really hard time with it, but it's also perfect for goofy, silly multiplayer sessions. My friends who have played through the game a couple of times decided to just let me lead the game, and with them just being support, which allowed me to experience the exploration aspect of the game on my own terms without anyone showing me the way, which resulted in dying a lot. Oh man. Oh man. And then looking for alternate routes, only to realize that there isn't really an alternate route, and that I just have to face my fears of going up against a massive enemy that's in the way. In many ways, Dark Souls is about exploring a broken and dangerous world while trying to piece together the story of what happened, and while playing with friends is great, I don't think I'd enjoy it as much if I wasn't able to explore the game on my own and make the experience mine. Playing the game like this, a game that's traditionally and usually a single-player game, sort of enhanced my experience in multiple ways. Not only would me and my friends have some of the hardest laughs from just doing nothing in the game, but in a few areas here and there, the game doesn't allow you to summon your friends either, which means that you have to progress on your own. What makes this so interesting is that it allowed me to use the skills I had learned from goofing around to make progress and actually see that my friends weren't carrying me the entire time. I could totally beat up some dudes on my own. I had just learned to do so from playing with two other idiots. In a game where you're meant to die a bunch and learn from your mistakes and be better, this is incredibly empowering. And the best part about it was being able to show my friends that I, a baby infant Dark Souls newcomer, actually could make progress thanks to their help. For several months, we'd play different types of games like Apex Legends, PUBG, Left 4 Dead 2, and Rocket League, where we even entered a local tournament and got 0 points and was the lowest ranked team, but none of those experiences had come close to tying us together like Dark Souls has. An experience where you could just dive into the misery together, which is the best type of bonding you can do with your friends. Well, These Soulsborne games gives us gamers a challenge we don't really get anymore. The only way for us to affect the difficulty is through working hard to level up characters and weapons. And even if you still have some of the most powerful gear, or your character is really overpowered, you still have the mechanics down in your fingers to get through the game. The developers made the decision for you that this is how the game is meant to be played, and good luck.
If we let you carry on running around town, you'll continue to be exceptional, and we can't have that. You'll put us all out of a job.
With respect, sir, you can't just make people disappear.
Yes, I can. I'm the chief inspector.
Well, however you spin this, there's one thing you haven't taken into account. And that's what the team is going to make of this.
Every time there's a new Souls game or anything that resembles Dark Souls, we keep getting these stupid articles that ask the question, are these games too brutal? And shouldn't there be an easy mode? Honestly, I don't even know. I feel like the difficulty of Dark Souls is taking too much attention away from the game itself. Suddenly, it's not about having fun learning to play a game anymore. Suddenly, it's not a game that's all about exploring and actually having to deal with dangers and threats along the way, only to discover awesome loot or an amazing feeling of mastery. These arguments often make it seem like we've become too spoiled with modern games and how they allow us to breeze through with any form of threat or effort. I'm not a person that likes preaching to other people about how they should enjoy their games, because I get it. I used to be the type of person to be annoyed at Dark Souls for being too difficult. I used to be the person that would feel like buying these games were a waste of my money and that they made it unnecessarily difficult just either to mask lack of content or lack of good game design. But after having given the series a second try, I started realizing that maybe I was the one that was just unwilling to make the effort, and years of having the option to refuse to make an effort has spoiled me. I didn't realize that until I felt like going on a nostalgia trip and I started playing Crash Bandicoot again. Obviously, the two games aren't all that comparable, but look at Mr. Bandicoot over here. He's goofy, he's an animal, he's an idiot, and his game requires precise and timed jumps and movements. But the controls made that a little bit difficult, as they could at times feel clumsy and slow. Now, if we look at Mr. Dark Souls over here, he looks tough, he's got that edgy emo vibe going, and he also requires precise hits and well-timed attacks, and the controls are a bit heavy, but they're tight and precise. And while they barely seem comparable, both games are examples of providing a challenge to the player without having the ability to affect the difficulty. How did my poopy kid gamer skills manage to beat Crash Bandicoot back in the day? I adapted to the controls and allowed myself to learn how they worked and how the game wanted me to use them. Now, why did my 20-something gamer skills get angry at Dark Souls and not want to play anymore? Because I refused to adapt and learn how the game worked. If anything, Dark Souls has more of a difficulty setting than what Crash Bandicoot does, through being able to get stronger weapons, level up your characters and their abilities, which will allow you to progress more easily. The Souls series is a series of games. Geez, that's hard to say. The Souls series is a series of games that asks to be understood by the player and will only let you in if you give it a shot. When you hear gamers say, Dark Souls isn't that difficult, what they're really trying to say is, give the series a shot and don't go into it thinking you're gonna have a bad time, because then you will. It's the type of game that you still want to hang out with even if it smells bad, because you know that underneath the bad smell, it's able to provide something that's missing from your life. Maybe the challenge isn't to overcome the game, but to overcome yourself. Playing the game with my friends allowed me to not only understand the Souls series a whole lot more and what it asks of you as a player, but it also allowed me to appreciate video games on a different level. God damn it, I want every game to be Dark Souls now, don't I? Hey everyone, thank you for watching my video. I know that in the last Zelda video that I made, I promised that this might just be like a monthly or like a bi-monthly thing or whatever. And then it ended up being a little bit over a year because there was, you know, some stuff that came in the way in 2020. I didn't really feel motivated to write a whole lot through the entire pandemic, but I got the spark back lately. So while I obviously can't promise you anything because we all saw how that went, I can definitely say that I have a couple of other videos on the way that I'm still working on, that I'm writing. These videos take a whole lot longer than what I'm used to from the old days, but I'm trying my best to write as much as I can because I love writing. I love talking too much about video games. I love rambling about video games. And while this video was probably a little bit different than the Zelda one, then I hope you still enjoyed it and that we can, you know, agree on something. And I don't know, if you played Dark Souls or anything, just let me know in the comments and I don't know, share the video with a friend. I don't know, I've been out of this game for a really long time. Until next time.